So what we need to do is we can't just have this display permanent as a default. We need to have something, make something happen when you click on something, and then it can display. So in order for us to do that, we have to get rid of this. Let's see. And start some new code. Let's bring that down at the bottom. Okay. Now we have backdrop as a query selector. We also have to have another section that needs to appear called modal, and we see that here. Modal, backdrop, and modal all need to appear. It's display none right now. We need it to turn into a block. So how do you do that? Do another one, and then that is modal. And var means variable. So the variable modal equals document query selector, and then it's I should have just copied and pasted. And I want the dot modal, and that's that. Make sure I have my curly braces. Yeah, and don't forget the format is very important. Curly braces, parentheses, and all that, and quotations and all that stuff. It's just how it is. Now, there's something else that we want to select, and we're going to call this, we want to select buttons. We want to select, so I'm going to call this select plan buttons, and this equals document query selector, and this one is all because there's more than one button. It's not a precise area. It's multiple buttons. So I'm saying query select all. Although we will define it in a bit, and by saying plan button, and I think that's it. Yes. Again, all right. We'll check this to see if this is right in a little bit, but we have the variables already. Now we can just notice the format of select plan buttons. This is called camel style. It's like the back of a camel. Whenever a new word is mashed together, you put a capital P, so that's plan buttons, and you mash it all together when you're doing variables and you're naming variables. And you always want to name variables to match what you're, you could call it anything, but I could call this select. I don't know, but just keep it simple and match the variable name with what you're doing. Great. Select plan button, and again is that. So I'm going to see what all buttons that it's selected and make sure that it's because I want to double check it, and this is how you check it and to see if things are working. And you go over here again, save default browser, and then I want to view developer. I think developer tools will work. And what pops up is a node list. And so we've selected 0, 1, 2, 3 buttons. Note that it starts with 0. It doesn't say 1, 2, 3. It starts with a 0. That's just how coding works. 0 ones and all that stuff, but it starts with a 0. So notice that has happened. All right. Getting back to the code now, we have to figure out the code that will essentially put everything in motion. And you need to do a little bit of math. And we're going to, when you do math, you say this is happening, this needs to happen. So what needs to happen is we need to go through those 3 buttons, and basically we start with like, it's a loop, because those 3 buttons, that's an array. That's known as an array. Whenever you have more than one element, or I forgot what you call it, but it's basically 3. So you have to say, and this is how you write this kind of mathematical equation, is variable equals, starts with button 1, which is 0, and then you keep going through a loop until, select plan buttons has gone through the entire length. And that's what this code means. So we have 2 arguments. We have variable I, and that stands for, call it that iteration. And that initially equals 0. So you keep going through a loop until it's less than the length, until it matches the length. And the other argument you do is I plus plus, or the kind of like a mathematical equation, because you basically, it just means that the loops have to happen one after the other. When you finish a loop, then start the new. And this allows increments, essentially. So let me just put that, okay, and naturally did that. And then, but this phrase is not open. This command, this program is not done yet, because what does it do when you go through the loop? You have to now make the argument. You have to add an event. You have to do the event listener, which is when it goes through each of these, it basically, when it goes through the loop, we want to execute after each loop, after each button, this happens, essentially. So select plan buttons. I should copy and paste it. And don't ask me why, but you use these kind of brackets. I dot add event. Are you gonna do that? Okay, listener. And the event is click. When you click the button, this happens. This happens as in this function happens. So you have to now add a function. And just the weird coding is that you have to have a parentheses next to the function. It's just how it is. Is that right? So that is that. Let me make sure that's right. Okay, I think that's right. Here comes curly brackets again. So now you have to, let's see, hold on. This is when you display the block. You turn it into, this is where when you get to the modal and the backdrop. So you go modal.style dot display, and you can dot style, and you recognize this from before. Display, and then it is block, and then semicolon. Is that right? Copy and paste this down and turn this into backdrop. Okay. And then you got to button this up down here. It's kind of confusing. You do. Hold on. Is that right? I think. And that should work. And we will test that in one moment. So we add the code, what we want to execute after each loop. You have the loops going here. So it's searching, it's making sure that everything is considered, right? And then when you click one of the buttons, this function happens. What happens is that both these two, which are in here, this kind of section, displays. Okay? All right. We can watch that in action. So, and then this is the math again, making it starting from 0, which is the first button essentially. And we saw these button lists here in console.direct. And this allows one to happen right after the other. And then each time this happens. Again, this happens. Again, this happens. So it makes sure that this event, it listens to click, make sure that these functions happening. It goes into action once this is clicked. Okay? Let's see if it works. So let's see if it works. Before we see if it works, I just wanted to point something out to you. You see this part of the parentheses? That goes all the way here. That's why it's funky. You got this parentheses that's enveloping all the way to here. You have function parentheses that relate to the function, and that's just, I won't go into the theory behind that, but that's just how a function works. So now we got to see if it works. And make sure you, okay. Open in default browser. So when I click this button, it's supposed to work. So, and yes, it does work. So that JavaScript code made this to happen. Now, none of these work yet because we have to write further. This just goes to nowhere right now because we haven't done that code yet. But we have gotten it to that point, and we will continue with this JavaScript coding in the next video, hopefully.